very fortunate, moved to Key West in '96, got involved with the garden in '97, became a volunteer, and then became a board of director in November of '97. I love the city. I love being part of the city. I love the community of the city. I wanted to give back, but I hate the politics. I still do, as we all know what's going on in that temperature climate. So this was a great way. I feel very honored and privileged to be with this organization for 24 years now. And as I tease everyone, I didn't climb the ladder, I climbed the tree. Because I was a volunteer first, then a board member, then an administrator, and then a general manager, and then I was appointed executive director in 2011, which they officially promoted me in 2012. And I feel very honored, one, to still be here, and two, to see the milestones this garden has made over the last 25 years. And you being here now means you're part of it, so thank you very much. Once again, my name is Misha McRae. I'm the executive director. I'm kind of the voice and the face of the garden. I have a great memory, so I've got a good historical basis that's going on. And I'm going to try to cram 85 years of this garden into an hour and, 50 minutes now. We've lost some time here. Starting in 1914, on the ship captain's the sample family donates Stock Island, the entire Stock Island to Key West as a recreational area. He couldn't pay his taxes at the time, so he donated all 55 acres, which is Stock Island, to the city as a recreation area. 1934, 35, and 36 was the WPA. Put people back to work. The city was bankrupt. And the 55-acre tract of this tropical forest at that time was created through the Federal Emergency Relief Act, or WPA, with the help to recover from the Depression and create one of the biggest attractions in South Florida. In fact, the whole premise of this organization has been to be an attraction, was to bring people down here to this wonderful island as in a means to learn more, to live more, and to experience more. In 1945, the city deeded the land to the government to build the Emergency War Hospital, which means as I go up in years, keep in mind on the size of the garden, right? It started in 55. It started being, the Depression, development and everything started piece marking the garden away. In 45, the city deeded the land to build an emergency war hospital. That's what was sitting where the pond is right now. Okay. In 1962, the city commissioner designs to pardon or to cordon off the remaining 11 acres of the garden as a permanent wildlife and nature sanctuary. This is supposed to be the means out of 55, down by 62, only 11 acres. That is the one thing that we have as the society to hang on, that the city's not supposed to be able to do anything with it because it was already proclamated as being a permanent sanctuary. In 1988, the Key West Botanical Garden founded the Society with the ranks and the fortitude of people like Miss Betty Davian and a core of about 6 others. That was an acclamation of Garden Club, Orchid Society, Audubon, everyone. Miss Betty stepped out the helm and said, if we're going to protect what's left of this garden, we better incorporate, we better get a 501c3, and we better get a lease with the city. Yeah, and that's one of the things that's kept us here all this time, because I promise you, it'd be a New York minute, we'd be hotels and condos. We've already had battles over this in my tenure here. In 1991, the city turns over the management of the remaining 7.8 acres to the society to run. As part of the lease, we have full custody of it. We run the whole organization. They wanted no liability, any expense or anything, all right, that's associated with it. In 2000, the society was awarded a grant to build a visitor center and pavilion. You hear of the work of the Tourist Development Council, TDC. We are one of the first nonprofits that went to the TDC asking for $2 million to help build this garden up. If you've been around for that long, prior to 2003, this wasn't part of the garden where you're sitting at now. There was only the 7.8, which starts as a visitor center. And it was really, as I said back in the early days, it was kind of the Harrison Ford day. You had to hack your way through to get to the garden. And the board of directors, like I said, I joined in '97. In 2000, we created a mission statement, which is supposed to be a forecast, and it's actually still up on the wall in the visitor center, of what we foresee the garden to be in the next 15 or 20 years. We came up with 3 things that we knew we had to do. We had to, Mama told me you want people come visit you, fix up your front door. That's why we went to the to TDC with the visitor center. We got the grant and we put in the visitor center and the restrooms and the garden courtyard. Back before 2003, the courtyard used to be the old parking lot. You had to come in behind Bayshore Manor. The blue lantana is still there, and you pulled into this muddy parking lot. There was 1 kiosk and 1 trail into the garden. And you're lucky if you made it to the pond and back without having to cut something down. We used to meet in the parking lot behind Bayshore Manor, and then in the parking lot over here, which used to be the way to the old Monroe County buildings, the old hospital, in our lawn chairs trying to figure these things out. The second thing we came up is that we had to bring it into the 21st century. We went to AT&T for a grant to help us with Wi-Fi cell phone tours. We went from we had the pipe cleaners, you all remember the pipe cleaners? And the little cardboard signs for the plants. We went to the more updated, actually hard-pressed and printed signage for the garden. And then the third thing that we came up with was, children are our future. We had to create an education program. We did a pilot program in 2004. It was very successful, and by 2006, the Eckerd Family Foundation footed $35,000, $350,000 to create our education program. I'll get there. It takes me a while time. In 2003, a grant to build the butterfly habitat and boardwalk was also through TDC, and that is basically when you go to what we call the historical part of the garden, not this south end, but the north end. That's all still there from 1930s. That's what it was pretty much. But we did get a grant to go in and put boardwalk because once again, we wanted to make the best experience possible for our guests. I realized early on that if we were going to save this garden, we needed to get what's called vested interest. We had to get people in here to find out what they love about this garden, and let them go at it and help us preserve it for the future. At the same time, $4.5 billion was procured from the Florida Community Land Trust. If you've never heard of them, that's an organization in Florida whose sole purpose and mission is to take private land and return it to the public. We were in a 4-year battle. Back in the day, 2002, they plowed all of the buildings down. They were condemned, the old hospital and everything, and put it up as a 5-acre parking lot to sell. In 48, when the Navy took the property over, they used it up until the 60s when the Navy decided they didn't want it anymore. At that time, the law says, that you can take public land for military use for wartime, but when they're done with it, it goes back to the county and not back to the city. So Monroe County had access and ownership of this entire property up until 2005. The Community Land Trust of Florida, Community Land Trust of Florida helped us raise the $4.65 million to buy back 5.25 acres, which is where we're sitting and standing on right now. All right. 2005, the garden was designated as the southernmost trailhead of the United States, U.S. Highway 1, the scenic highway corridor, and the official stop on the Great Florida Birding Trail. One of my first jobs as administrator was sitting in the new visitor center, greeting guests that come in. Our local Audubon Society said there were no birds out of the tropical forest. So I put a sheet out just for a good old-fashioned Excel spreadsheet out and said, please list what birds you've seen. And over a 4-week period, I remember this as vivid as yesterday, 52 species of birds were identified, 11 on a threatened and endangered list, and 4 never seen in the lower Keys before. That's what got at least the Fish and Wildlife Department sparked interest in us. And of course, the state of Florida has the Department of Agriculture, the Great Florida Birding and Wildlife Trail. And at that time, they designated us as the southernmost trailhead. That's what that little kiosk out there, when you come into the visitor center, you see is designated to see. Going onward, in 2008, we got a grant from TDC, but also from another organization, which was the South Florida Water Management District, to reestablish Northside Pond. That's what we call it, Northside Pond. It was the pond. Do you all know the history of Stock Island? Stock Island was called Stock Island because it was the only place that had a body of fresh water. So my euphemism here, my little joke is George said to Eunice, I'm going to Stock Island to get the mules because this is where they left all their livestock. The Stock Island, the pond basically went on the east end you see, but it also went into the parking lot. You'll see how the land slopes a little bit. Because when the Navy took the property in '48, the first thing they did was cover the pond up. And then they put foundation down where they built an emergency hospital. They've had some barracks and a mortuary. The mortuary is still fresh in my mind because when I started in 97, 98, and 99, the then city mayor, Wilhelmina Harmey, I don't know if y'all recognize that name or not, she paid the city of Key West, or no, she paid Monroe County $10 a month to let us meet in the mortuary, where our meeting room was in the exam room. Being the newbie, I had to sit over the drain. I still have nightmares about that. So in 2008, we got the grant to rebuild the north side pond. I call it rehabitat it. As we all know, you can restore, rebuild, but it's never as good as the original. But we got pretty darn close. We got involved with the South Florida Water Management District, which gave us an easement because we were restoring wetland habitat, which was a prime project at the time. But we also got involved with the University of Florida. They have designated our Northside Pond on their Great Lake Watch program. It's always kind of funny. I'm from Texas. I know what a lake looks like. But it is considered, in their analogy, a lake because when you go from Florida City down to the end of Key West, it's the largest body of fresh water. It gets tested monthly. It gets reported on their website that it is fresh, sweet rainwater, salt-free, except now and then when the storms come through, but it doesn't settle. It does not go up and down with the aquifer, so it's not dictated by the tide like Davian Pond or the marsh in the back is. And it is really home to 11 species of damsel and dragonflies. We have all the turtles that are many people's favorites here. But also you will see annually those freshwater marsh birds that come through here. Your mallards, your pipe-billed grebes. I even saw a masked duck. One New Year's we had the masked duck, which is a bluebill. The coot has a red bill. And the coot has the white bill. And the moorhen has the red bill, so we had our own red, white, and blue. I love it. I had a picture. We recently lost some files that is so disappointing. At the same time in 2008, we went to and applied for the state of Florida Endangered Plant Advisory Council, EPAC. They are the #1 organization, I think it's international now, whose sole focus is to preserve, conserve, and propagate threatened and endangered plant species. We went through them with a project. I remember the issue about it in 2008 was big for me because I had a board of directors who thought other aspects of the garden was more important than a garden nursery. But still to this day, I stand hold true that having a garden without a nursery is like owning a restaurant not having a kitchen. It just doesn't make sense. And at that time, as unpopular as it was to be brought in, EPAC stepped up with a $64,000 grant to help us with the nursery, help us get it started. And any of you who've been to the plant sales recently, 190 species of native plants, and most of them are all parented by plants here in this garden. We do work with the state parks to cultivate and save. That's two rows of plants are just about those threatened and endangered plants. And EPAC has been with us since that day, helping the program grow. Right now, our nursery produces about 2,000 plants to sell to the public to plant in the garden. And if you're up to date on any of the news, we work with doing outplanting with the library. We just did a program with the Girl Scouts for the high school. And we're working on a project with Big Munson Island, the Boy Scouts, to help them reforest their island that was decimated from Hurricane Irma. 2010, the Blue Butterfly Garden, specifically because we finished the boardwalk around the pond. The Blue Butterfly Garden was created to address those 5 species of blue butterflies known in Florida. Now, get the idea, they're not monarchs, they're not any of the imperials or anything, they're tiny, right? The big one at the top, the dream, is of course the Miami blue. idea is that it's kind of like the historic butterfly garden. The Blue Butterfly Garden was the field of dreams. Build it, they will come, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, a $100,000 project was eaten down in 6 weeks by iguanas.
Oh.
So we had to change thought process and get out of the box, and we started growing our butterfly plants in cages so the iguanas couldn't get to them. It looked weird, but look what we have now. Right now, we have 4 of the butterflies that are on the imperial list that are home here at the garden. The Miami blue still remains elusive, but we partnered with the University of Florida Imperial Butterfly program 2 years ago, and they are doing a study out where they found Miami blues on Big Pine, but also a small colony out on the Marquesas. And they drive by here all the time, so I keep working with them. Can't you just lose a couple when you drive by? So the whole scope and logic in my mind is that one day we will have a small structure or building where they can do their research and study here. It became very important to them in 2020 when the Florida whites were being lost. They were not, the habitat stretch was condensing big time. Probably a lot because of Hurricane Irma and the loss of habitat, but a lot of other factors too, because up there in that way they do a lot of spraying, they do a whole lot of other stuff that they can come out over here because we do not spray. We have a agreement with the aqueduct where they do not come out and spray and do their stuff here. They can do anything around it, but not in it. And then through that we partner with them. The little gambetes, the mosquito fish they put in your yard, they come right here from our pond. They come out and net them about every 6 weeks or so and then distribute them. So we're doing our part for the community. So the Miami blue is still our dream hope for, but we have the habitat for when it's time, and hopefully it will be soon. At that time in 2010, we opened the native nursery focused on the protection and the education of endangered flora and fauna. We went through that, but more importantly, as far as the public, we offered the public 8 self-guided tours that were on printed sheets with a little map to get you around the garden. It was not, before that, it was kind of like I said, you wandered around and entered at your own risk. This actually had assigned walkways, assigned markers, assigned signs that people could learn about the garden. Once again, going back to that vested interest. I think, and I challenge anyone to go through the garden nowadays. When you see a plant, especially those white signs, there's going to be one of 3 things there. Something that you know, right? Something that you're interested in, you're going to remember, right? And the third thing is that you're going to find out if it's true or not. So it's really good aspect, because the reason plants are called native is because they either were here when the island started, they either flew in or floated in through the Caribbean. And native also, the aspect is that the native people at the time used them. Stopper trees are called stopper for a reason. At the time, the yellow fever, right, and all that was rampant. It was like the Pepto-Bismol of the day. So some of the names kind of click when you start reading the sign. Oh, that makes sense. All right. In 2011, through the aid of the TDC, once again, this Topino Chapel was renovated. We put $250,000 into it. This chapel goes all the way back to 1958, so-called Topino, because at that time the Topino family lost 2 family members, and they only had 2 options in the 50s, was to go downtown where all of the bars and the raucous was going on Front Street, or go to Marathon to do any kind of memorial. So they actually built and dedicated this chapel over to the county at the time. When the land was given up in 1960, Monroe County took it over. This was their offices at the time. And they were still using a little bit of the hospital and the barracks over there. We added to it the pavilion you see next door and the gaming tables. When Florida Community Trust came in and said, here, we'll help you with this $4.65 million, but you got to do these 38 things. And one of those was actually the gaming tables. Some of you are aware that we have a kayak landing next door, across the street from us, right next to the Power Squadron. That was all promises that we made, additional parking, and I'll get to more in just a minute here. In 2011, it was our 80th anniversary. And we actually published our first anniversary garden guide. And it soon quickly became, and this was with the help of the docents, that this became the Bible of this garden. because it showed one of three things on just about every plant you'll find in here. What's native about it, right? A description of it, and that antidote of whether it was the Pepto-Bismol at the time, whether it was the bird plant or butterfly plant. I'm always amazed that the blackbead literally sustains 22 different species of birds and butterflies throughout the year. So those kind of things that you get and you pick up, not to mention where it does well, so that when it's time for you to get rid of your roses and petunias, we have the plants that you need. All right. In 2015, 2 grants were awarded to replace the security fencing and the new entrance. So this is all again related to FCT, because once we got this in and we started the new entrance and the parking lot, we had to secure it. So we went for a grant to help us put in that green fencing that you see around. And that's how old it is. It's time to be replaced, promise you that. In 2016, we added 4 new tours and a cactus barren exhibit that were added. The cactus barren came out of the EPAC, one of the programs we found out, and people are still amazed to know that there are tropical cactuses. There are 4 species, but all of them are on the impaired list, and we had 3 of the 4. We partnered with Fairchild Garden back in 2004 and brought in the semaphore cactuses from their exhibit and put them in with ours, which we had the prickly pear and the 3 others that are just not at the top of my head right now. I'm not the biologist, I'm more the financial person. I've had to learn osmosis, kind of to suck everything in. But yes, that was in 2016. We were listed on the Heritage Bike Trail. So at that time you could walk in, you could bike in, and you could drive in. And with the airport as close as it is, you could probably parachute in. We're all covered, And there's no way you're gonna miss this, right? And then also in 2016, our 85th anniversary garden guide was published. It was the 2nd edition. It took all of the changes that we had and brought it up to date and bigger than better. In 2017, partnership with the City of Key West, we opened up the canoe kayak landing. We got a grant, and the City of Key West actually forked out money to help us do it. It's one of the things they needed, and it was one of those prerequisites that we have with the Florida Community Trust that we would do. And of course, 17, we all know about that year, the dreaded Irma. The garden sustained 20 miles an hour winds, 3 tornadoes that were documented. You can see what they went through, caused a loss of 90% of our canopy. I did all the FEMA reports. At the end of the evaluation, we reported $1,250,000 worth of damages. Of that, FEMA committed to help us restore $602,000. We're still battling over 40 of it, but most of that other stuff has come through. We lost 3 sections of the garden, 2 roofs, irrigation, lighting systems, Wi-Fi. Everything was flattened. It was really sad. And 6 weeks after Irma, I remember coming in, and literally 3 days after Irma, you couldn't walk because the debris was literally 10, 12 feet tall. And it took us about 8 weeks just to hack trails to get to the office, to the visitor center, and to the nursery. Come on in, welcome. If you'd be kind enough to sign in for us, we'd appreciate it. All right, and of course 2018 and 19 was storm restoration. We partnered with the University of Florida's Imperial Butterfly. We went through that to help us with the Florida Whites, and we started working with FEMA and local contractors to restore the garden back to where, on the path to its new glory that we finally have made it. And then most currently, in 2020, we barely got out of Irma, and then we had the COVID. COVID was garden closures. I just put that in big letters because that was the truth of it. All our activities and events were canceled. We were closed for about 5 months, but we opened up to members for a short time first because we had to fight through the city, and this was, I'm very thankful for the board of directors in helping me achieve that if you're gonna beat COVID outdoors, where else, right? 6 foot wide boardwalks, a lot of open air. They finally allowed us to do that, and then by the end of, Karen helped me, I think it was November when we started charging again?
Yep.
Yeah, we started opening up to the public when slowly more people were coming into the Keys, all right? But it was a very good year for the garden also on that, where we lost money from our emissions and our events and our, our just regular revenue that we need. We were able to procure a total of about 9 different grants to help us do it. The big one was the payroll protection. They gave us $60,000 to help pay our employees. I think we were one of maybe a handful of organizations in Key West that actually committed to pay our employees throughout the COVID pandemic. I'm very proud of the organization for sustaining and respecting our staff in doing that. It was a vital component of who we are. We got $5,000 from the Florida Humanities Council. We got $10,500 from the Florida American Rescue Plan. We actually got an additional $4,200 from the Florida American Rescue to help pay for utilities for 3 months. So that was a blessing as well. But more importantly, the EPAC and our nursery and our plant conservation committee worked with me on what I think is a very big milestone for this organization, for where we were, what we wanted to be, and now what we are. In 2020, ARBNet accredited us level 2 with their organization. ARBNet is an international, world-renowned organization whose sole purpose is the restoration, conservation, and protection of woody plants, trees, but not necessarily trees, bushes and everything. We had to go through a 22-step marker to prove what we have, showing what our inventory was, and we were able to get the level 2, which is just under 500 species of native wood plants that we have here at the garden. You might be interested to know that the tropical forests right now, botanical garden is a collection, and it can be a collection of anything from bonsais to champion trees. Right now, our inventory in our collection is 529 different species of native plants. And once again, those native plants are the ones that were already here, the ones that are throughout the Caribbean, flew in or floated in on the tides. And through that I think we were one of the premier collections because of how many we have. And of course, well over 8,500 different plants total. ARBNet helped step us up into that international flair. Back when we had a botanist on staff, I was very pleased. This was back in 2009 that the Kew Garden in the United Kingdom recognized us and helped us and sent people over. By then, ARBNet reestablished that connection with those European gardens, but also helped us in the next step forward, which I'll get to in just a second. Of course, 2021 was the biggest milestone, and the party that never happened was our 21st and our 85th anniversary of the Botanical Garden. A gala committee had been created and was working for 2 years before it. And so far it's been postponed. We refused to cancel. We postponed it. Hopefully this fall. We're just going to call it an anniversary party. But once again, 85 years is huge in a culture and climate. And don't get me wrong, I love Key West, but a culture and climate that's heads in beds, hotels and condos. For this garden to still be here what we are, has been no small feat. And it's a battle that we need to work on every day, and I'll get that to you in a second as well. The Key West Botanical Garden, from the ARBNet, we were accredited through the Botanic Garden Conservation International, which is also an international conglomerate. They're located in the United Kingdom. And that organization only acknowledges any organization that has achieved a certain level of standards. And as we went through with ARBNet, there was 22 steps. There was 45 for Botanic Gardens International in order for them to accredit us, which puts us on the map worldwide once again, because now everyone in the world recognizes that we hold the highest standards of any botanical garden and arboretum in the world. And I think that's huge. They should help us with grant money too. All right, if you don't already know, the mission of the garden, the whole sole purpose is to preserve, develop, expand, and maintain the historic Key West Tropical Forest and Botanical Garden as an arboretum, a botanical garden, cultural heritage museum, wildlife refuge, education center, and we do that by showcasing historical and significant Florida. Our collection is exclusively native to the Florida Keys, to Cuba, and to the Caribbean. Once again, what was here what flew in and what floated in. That's what we're all about. Our vision is to encourage the study of the collection. A Center for Study and Research, which has become our nursery. Back in the day, you know, when you have a party, everyone hangs out in the kitchen. It's kind of that was what the visitor center was. When we opened the nursery, now everyone goes there. It's pretty good. So I do call it fondly the kitchen because we're cooking up plants in there. All right. We promote the study and the protection of threatened, endangered, and endemic species of flora and fauna, both resident and migratory in the Florida Keys, Cuba, and the Caribbean Basin. And then also we promote the benefits of native vegetation worldwide. We encourage conservation. We promote the benefits of native plants and wildlife. And we provide educational programs for all age groups and various levels of interest geared to Keys residents, tourists, plant experts, academia, the list goes on and on. I ran out of room on the page. The message we want here is that planting native isn't just at this garden. It should be in your yard too. We all know that the loss of habitat and environment changes the weather. So anytime that we can reestablish that, you're not only helping the environment as a whole, but you're giving those threatened, endangered, and perilled species an opportunity to survive and thrive. And I tell everyone as well, you work with our nursery crew, you plant in your yard, you'll have a kaleidoscope of color, not just on the plants, but all the little visitors you get throughout the year as well. How do we play a role in the community? We are conservation of critical habitat. I tell the city of Key West every time I meet them that every great city has a great botanical garden, and they have one. They have one right here. That's why we need more support from them, not just word of mouth, but once again on politics, so I get off that box. The education, ecotourism. I was lucky to be here at that time. That ecotourism was a brand new phrase back in 2001 and 2002. The well-traveled, educated populace wanted to go and see more natural things. So we kind of caught that wave in that 2003, 2004 that helped us get the word out of the garden and also forced us to step forward and bring this garden into the 21st century. We are a venue for parties, party rentals, for our presentations, for children's shows, everything that is here. But we are a community center. We do our companion program works with students, middle to high school, to get their community service hours. And I promise you, it looks very good on their resumes when they apply to a college that they work for a nonprofit conservation preservation group. And we even had a couple social media kids helping us with that. In our companion program, more than 40 kids went through. The statistics are pretty good. Three got scholarships to college, one to Duke and the other two to state universities. Before the companion program, our students didn't even know there was a future with the land. Everything was hospitality or marine biology. So we added that scope and that opportunity to it. One of the mothers told me her son participated in our science fair back in 2011, had never shown any interest, care, or anything. That's where these kids get together and they put a program together and they put an exhibit together and they get judged on it. He got so turned on by science and everything that he went and got a scholarship studying chemistry at the University of Florida. She thanks the garden for all of it, you know, because before then there wasn't even a tribute program. You'll see some of the brown signs around the garden. This is a good way. We're not a memorial. We celebrate life. You can tell the weather through some of the trees 100 years ago. So our tribute programs allows participants to honor the memory of friends and family in a positive, growing manner where they can adopt a tree. And we will guarantee that tree for 10 years. We put a sign out with recognition of it. And it's a way, when I say we got people buried out here, I don't mean to be gross. But the tribute program allows you to spread the ashes and everything else. So it's a really good thing. The green space. Green space. I'll say it again, green space. We got the largest volume of green space anywhere here down in the South Keys. We have special collections, our EPAC plants, our cactus barrens, you know, our butterfly plants. All the collections are accumulated in a manner to not only sustain them, but to teach you, the public, about them, right? 2 butterfly gardens, both of them 1.5 acres. Historical is around the boardwalk, underneath the boardwalk, right? And then the Blue Butterfly Garden. And a lot of people are surprised that we have 3 freshwater features, and the 4th is the saltwater kayak. We have the Northside Pond, which is all freshwater. Davian Pond is brackish. In fact, it goes up and down with the king tides. You're going to find your saltwater marsh birds out over in that area. And then in the back 40, which we fondly call the hammock now, we have the marshlands. When the king tide comes in, it floods up. Education is so important from the very beginning onward. We begin with our leaders of tomorrow. As I pointed out in 2002 and 3, children are our future. There's the whole truth about it. But also, it was a sustainability ploy. Because if we can get the kids in here and we get their enthusiasm, they're going to bring their parents. But then we found out how important it was to Monroe County. At that time, all students in Monroe County were considered at risk. All of their scores were below average and failing. And within 2 years, this program here with Botanical Garden, like I said, it was piloted in 2004, opened in 2006, started doing hands-on education, environmental studies, science, arts, everything here at the garden. All the scores went up 4 points. Now, I'm not a school superintendent. I don't know. I just know that's a big number when they say it. 4% is a pretty big number to achieve in 2 years. We've consistently achieved that, and now we work very closely with our local educators, with parents, homeschooling and everything. And we do have not only hands-on where field trips come here, but we have a virtual program that is now reaching all the way up to Washington State, to Georgia. They've realized what important program, a product that we have to offer, and a lot of people are on board about it. It is totally grant and public funded, so bring your checkbooks, okay? This continues. Right now we have pre-K through 12th grade, but through our education program, we focus on the environmental studies, the STEM platform, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. Now we've added 7th and 8th. And that's targeting those students that need that for their academic academic future. Companion programs is one of it. 3/4 of our companion programs, that's the student program I told you about through the nursery, are AP students. And they learn about the garden, they learn about the plants, they learn about conservation. And one of the things they have to do is to do a presentation. And 3 to 4 of them have done about the garden as their presentation to get their scores. As far as the public, what type of visitors do we invite or attract? Since 2002, the ecotourist arena has been the fastest growing form of tourism. Before COVID, we had a program through Historic Tours that 4 different cruise lines, most of them small except for Celebrity, offered one program on their ships to their guests that was all environmental, and it was us. And we brought in anywhere from 15 to 30 guests on a private tour of the garden with our docents to learn more about the history of the garden and the importance of plants. And we have found that over the time period that the visitors have been more educated, more involved, lots of questions, and lots of satisfaction on what they get out of it. Because we do get rated after they get back to the ship. They rate on what the tour was like. Birders is huge. We are one of all, besides the Hawk Watch, we are the only organization that actually does a migration census every fall. You've been around for a while, you've seen my notices for birding and wildlife adventure. We bring in known experts on the birding and the butterfly field to take you through the garden to find, identify, and give you little histories about the species. This fall in September, in an hour, they identified 32 species of birds and 21 species of butterflies in 1 hour. Through that, we partnered with the Greater Florida Birding and Wildlife Trail. They do the butterfly program, where if you identify 10 butterflies, the state gives you a certificate. If you identify 20, you get another one, another one, another one. Our education program has adopted it for the students and the kids to get them out in the field, learn about the butterflies. And I have got students that tell me, stuff I don't know about butterflies now, because that's one thing that does actually gets their attention. Wildlife in general, a young gentleman I talked out here, Karen, he said he needs some more tan hats. We're out. He said, "I'll buy a bunch if we have them." Come out with their cameras and so forth and document the wildlife that this habitat provides. Putting the pond into discard, reestablishing it, right? Rehabitating it was a big mile mark for this garden. I think not only did it show the city of Key West that we were serious, but the environment conservation organizations as a whole recognized the huge effort it was. But for you and I, it's kind of like when we're on the interstate and we see trucks stop. You know, the pond is a beacon that right now, if you go out to ebird.org, 190 different species of birds migrates through this little plot of land twice a year, springtime and fall, right? And because of that, one of the reasons is because that freshwater pond, it's a place where they come rest, they get a drink, they get something to eat, and they go about their turn. 4 species of butterflies migrate through us. Not as grand as the days, and I do remember them well back in the 2000s, the 1990s and 2000s, where we'd have literally 50, 60,000 monarchs come through here in a 3-week period. It was always the second week of November through the end. This year, I think I counted probably 20 or 25. But at one time, it was Mother Nature's design. They came down Central America, or they came down the East Coast, which is called the fly zone, right, to get to Mexico. And because of that, I remember the droughts back in the 2000s in Texas and the plains. All of those monarchs coming down through Central America perished. There was no food, but a third of them came through us, and it helped. So we're doing our part in that. And of course, our big thing as a mission is as plant conservationists, especially on the rare and endangered, because if we lose it, we lose it. And folks, it's still true. The statistics today says over 200 species of plants and animals go extinct daily, still. And I'm telling you truthfully, if you don't think mankind's in that line somewhere, we need to think it again, because it definitely is. And if we don't take care of what's around us, we'll never be able to take care of ourselves. That's my other soapbox. All right, the role in the state. We are, like I said, we're part of the Florida Birding and Wildlife Trail. Let me see, I'm missing something here. Misha always has a backup. Make sure I do have it. The role in the state is that we are one of probably 64 organizations that address and propagate threatened and endangered plants. We are part of the Scenic Highway Corridor. We're part of I always get the name wrong, the southernmost paddle trail, which gets you over to the kayak landing. We are a premier site for the studies of water, fresh water, as well as the conservation, of course, is the study of just the plants in general. Role in the nation has grown, as I pointed out. We remain the only frost-free subtropical forest and garden in the continental United States. Some of the uneducated travelers says, well, there are tropical forests in the continental United States. You cannot compare us with Hawaii. But and that means that our plants grow all year long. Back in the day when I started, it was so bizarre, our hardwood trees would lose half their leaves, and then 3 months later would lose the other half. So they still went through a cycle. But now with the weather changes, Mary Lou can help me with it, they pretty much shed every 2 or 3 months, and I'm not sure what or why that is. We are listed as a living museum because some of our trees are well over 100 years old, and this is through the Institute of Museums and Learning Sciences. They've helped us with grant funding for our education program. That's how we got on their radar, and they've been great help. We're the U.S. Byway site overseas highway, and that we partnership with state and national colleges, environmental studies, and wildlife protection. It's one of the goals that I've had over my last 6 years is to get involved with more universities. And right now we have about 5 that we work with. The latest is the University of Western Florida. Who knew, right? I didn't. But they're helping us with our Chuck exhibit. Internationally, we are one of the 5 areas of critical concern, which is supposed to mean that you cannot build on it. But talk to the city about the apartments back on politics. We identified as one of 25 locations in the world known for its biodiversity. That's the most numbered varieties of species. Amazon has literally 60, 70,000 within the 5 hectares, what they call them here. And we are 5.7 hectares, just size-wise. We don't even know all that's up there because before Hurricane Irma, some of our trees were 80 and 90 foot tall, and I couldn't pay anyone to get up there to find out what's going on. We do know a lot's going on. The best example we can give you is the Canary Island date palm, estimated to be over 150 years old. If you look up in this canopy, you'll see different plants growing. And there's a whole condo up there. We don't even know what it's all about. The Canary Island date palm. I speculate it was probably, you know, when the Sample family owned it, it was the pond and it was near their big residence or whatever. When we took the property over here, we had 5 sapodillas, which was considered a grove back in the day. And a big thing, they used the tree to make the chitwood skunk, right? But they're considered a cat too invasive through the Florida community. We had to eliminate them. We have a collection that has gained international acclaim and interest. That's Arnett. And then we recognize and credit as a native botanical garden, which is the Botanical Garden Conservations International. I can tell you truthfully, we're one of probably only 6 worldwide gardens that focuses exclusively on native plants. And that is what has garnered the success that we have. And I invite anyone to walk around the garden for 15, 20 minutes. You feel it. And a large part of that is our volunteers that help us out. They put their love, their dedication, expertise into the program. The plants grow, the people grow, and we're still here. Thank you. We thank them all for it. So in ending, I mean in all, did I do it? Yeah. Good for the community. This garden is good for the city of Key West. We're good for tourism, so we are covering that basis. We're good for the environment, and we're good for our future. Please make it your garden. If you're not a member, please become a member. If it's time to renew, renew. And if you're interested in learning more or would like to be more involved, please reach out to myself or Ed. And we are a donation, volunteer-driven organization. So give what you can. The annual fund letters will be going out soon. And keep in mind about what we can do for you because we certainly will try. Thank you. Are there any questions? Anyone have any questions?
Any questions for Misha? He covered a ton of information.
Misha,
If I was on horseback, I'd been sweating.
most years I know, you know, pre-COVID, I would say it was February or something, you'd have kind of an open house thing. You'd have, I forget